Friends and enemies, welcome to yet another edition of the Canadian Bitcoiners podcast. I'm Len, and today I'm going to be joined by not but Joey, but somebody else. I'm joined by Dean Linden. Dean, how are you, buddy?
You know, despite the big shoes I have to fill, I'm pretty good. Thanks, Len.
You'll do just fine. And so, you know what? It's been a long time since you've been in the show. There's been a lot has happened since you've been in the show, especially in the past few days, 48 hours, maybe a little bit 72 hours. Either way, lots happened. We'll be talking about that in just a second. Dean, for people who don't remember who you are, because it's been a while since you've been here.
Are there people out there that don't remember who I am, Len?
Just in case, we'll have to. There could also be some new people that jumped on the CBP bandwagon, and because of that, they got to get informed, educated, told exactly what's going on. Dean, talk about who are you, buddy, and maybe talk a little about Cypress Hills Partners.
Yeah, so Cypress Hills Partners. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of Cypress Hills Partners. We're a sort of a wholesale lender, focusing on primarily the unbanked and the unbanked in Canada. And so far, since we just celebrated our 9th year anniversary, we've deployed over $300 million, the majority of that to Canadian consumer borrowers. And we do that through some fantastic fintech partners that we've got across the country and entrepreneurs. And we're very, very proud of the work that we do in the Canadian consumer lending space. And it started off as sort of an opportunity to find an outsized yield, a safe, non-volatile yield for investors, and it's turned out to be we've been successful at that. But I think even more importantly, we're doing some good in the Canadian economy with the people that aren't fortunate enough to have relationships with regular big banks. So yeah, we feel I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish at Cypress Hills.
Are you able to talk about who it is that you're partnering up with, lending up money with, or is that something that's got to be held close to the vest?
No, I won't use names, but it's amazing the types of things that, I mean, I'm old enough to remember when I could walk into a bank on a Saturday afternoon with $5,000 worth of credit card debt. Not that I ever had $5,000 of credit card debt, but some credit card debt, and sit down with somebody across the table. And I was a kid, and I could consolidate that. I could consolidate that credit card debt and walk out of there with a loan that was at a regular bank interest. And those relationships now have completely ceased at the traditional banking level. So there's a whole host of really bright entrepreneurs that are sort of filling that gap with people that maybe don't own houses, don't have traditional collateral, and they're doing it in a variety of different ways. There's some people are lending a minimum of $40 at a time, and this money's out for 2 weeks, and there's all different ways that they're monetizing these things. But at the end of the day, it's providing people access to credit where they're otherwise in a traditional banking system there isn't any. So I remember when we first started, we had one group, and I was scratching my head going, boy, this is a great business we have, but I mean, where's the next deal coming from? And the fintech landscape and the lending landscape in Canada is very robust, and we're sort of at the forefront of that, and we're able to work with a lot of these entrepreneurs and help them get their businesses rolling and getting them some money to lend.
Awesome. We'll double back because I want to hit the sponsors really quick. I still want to ask you another question about Cypress Hills Partners, but we do have a couple of sponsors that I should be doing an ad read, and I will be doing an ad read. But the first one, I'm not going to do it myself. You're not going to do it either, Dean. We're going to have somebody else do it, and here it is.
And talk about the sponsors. EasyDNS. What a segue. If you want to get a website and host a domain, Mark is your guy. Go to easydns.com and check out the suite of services. They got everything there: virtual private server stuff. They got email. You can actually buy a domain with Mark if you want to, which we have done a couple of times now. And all that stuff is best in class at this point, I would say. Every week, it seems like there's another Bitcoiner, another Bitcoin company complaining about their registrar, complaining about their website, complaining about their shop or whatever. I've never heard anybody complaining to Mark. So if you're not using Mark yet, it's time to start. EasyDNS.com, promo code is CBP Media, and you can get 50% off your first round of buys. Not that you need it, because even if you had to pay full price, you'd still be saving time and money dealing with him instead of dealing with these other clowns that seem to be populating the internet, and just filling it with this other kind of shitty registrar options and services. So you should be going to easydns.com. That's where I would be going if I was starting something up. And we did. So, we're putting our money where our mouth is. Who's the other sponsor?
Thanks, Joey. You did a good job over there. Even though you're away at a cottage, you still have an influence over here. So it's awesome to hear you talk about ECDNS. Second sponsor of the show, it's Bull Bitcoin. Great place to buy your Bitcoin. Great place to sell your Bitcoin if you wanted to. The price of Bitcoin did shoot up a little bit today or last few days. So maybe it's an opportunity for people to sell if they want, but still you could buy nonetheless. You got the opportunity to do it on-chain. You could do it Lightning. So if the fees are high, which they're not, you have Lightning sitting there waiting for you. But keep that in the bullpen because fees are cheap. Not financial advice, of course. I would say just buy on-chain, but do your own research. Not only that, Bull Bitcoin has you covered with buying and selling. You could also then use your Bitcoin in other ways. For example, if you want to spend it and pay your bills, you can do so through Bull Bitcoin. You could start paying, say, your hydro bill or your mortgage payment, your car payment, whatever. You could do that. You could pay your bills with your Bitcoin through Bull Bitcoin. Finally, the thing that they do offer is you could buy gift cards. So you have your Bitcoin. It's gone up in price. You want to start spending it? You can. You can spend it in the real world indirectly by buying the gift cards that are available on Bull Bitcoin. You will say, get one for Home Depot or Starbucks, whatever the heck you want to do. And with that, you're spending your Bitcoin indirectly in the real world. You're living on the Bitcoin standard just the way Satoshi wanted you to do. Open an account, use our promo code below, do that. $21 will be added to your account, no questions asked. Those are the ad reads, Dean. I hope you enjoyed that.
You did a good job. And Joey, I really set me at ease there where he actually cursed. He actually said shit or shitty. So I guess we can use that. So then,
you could swear.
Big exhale there because I was worried I might slip. So.
No, you could go do whatever you want. I'll unfortunately, I'm going to swear a few times in the face.
Okay.
My apologies.
I'll join you.
Thank you very much. So with that, I just have to ask you one last thing with Cypress Hills Partners. Because credit is more challenging to get in the past, say, 2 years, did this impact your business line?
Positively.
Oh,
positively. Yeah. No, I think that, in our business, it's either feast or famine on one side or the other. So with interest rates low, Cypress Hills provides a really unique opportunity for investors to get some spread, and they can pull that money off credit lines and whatnot. But it's interesting. It's an inversely correlated to our deal flow. So there's always a lot of there's a lot of money out there for me and not a lot of deals, or there's a lot of deals and not a lot of money. And right now there's a lot of very, very active on the deal side. There's a lot of companies looking to expand, looking to do their thing in order to get more money into the hands of consumers. So yeah, we're growing and enjoying this environment for now. And I think that we're built to sort of have this well into the future, this situation. So we'll see.
Very cool. Before we go any further, there's something I have to do. One last thing on my things to do. We get comments every week. We get them in the form of boosts, which are Lightning transactions that come over to us. Top 5, I read them off and we go from there. So Wartime sends in the sats, 333 sats, and writes in with this comment. I don't know exactly how to take this, but either way, he says, they hate us because they ain't us. But anus, they're using A-N-U-S. So I like the way he's saying that. But either way, Wartime 444 sats with a fire and a heart emoji. Thank you very much. Mode BTC Dick 500 sats. It's kind of funny how a 27% drawdown makes some of us more bullish. Laugh out loud. I want to just comment on that. Yes, it's so true. When the price of Bitcoin goes down, it doesn't change my my perception of Bitcoin. The fundamentals haven't changed whatsoever. And, you know, I get more bullish by the day, regardless if the price goes up or down. So, yeah, man, I'm with you on that. Cute baby, 4,500 sats. Could you talk about Block's 3 nanometer chips? Any industry rumors on how the 5 nanometer prototype is performing? We'll be talking about that today. And hodl these nuts, my G, 10,000 sats. Pretty good chunk of change there. Thanks so much. He writes in, and I don't know how to deal with this one, but he says, I fucks with Canadian Bitcoiner. Y'all chill.
Hodl these nuts. You know, he put 10,000 Satoshis because he just wanted to hear you say hodl these nuts.
I'll take it. So what we do with these sats at the end of the day, we've been accumulating them, and we donate them periodically to worthy causes. I'm sitting on I think around 170,000 sats, give or take, right, since your last donation. And so once we figure it out, we'll donate the whole kikapoodle to somebody else. We'll find out who it is going to take it. But either way, thanks for the sats. It's going to be donated to worthy causes, and hopefully it jives with your causes as well. Typically, you know, it's Bitcoin related. But yeah, man. Anything you want to talk about before we dive into the Bitcoin?
You know, I think you got it. I don't know if I said this when we're live or not, but I've come off social media. I'm 3 weeks clean off social media. So I was shocked and dismayed to hear that. I think we'd be remiss if we got to talk about Donald Trump getting shot, don't we? Don't we have to talk about that? Because he's actually a huge proponent of Bitcoin. It's not just that, you know, and I think that he's somebody that we need to discuss a little bit because he's the Trumpster.
Yeah, and okay, we'll lead off with that story. That was on my list of things right away because that is the most pressing story of the last year, I think. The fact that somebody would go out of their way and try to assassinate a president or a presidential candidate, it blows my mind. Considering that the area in which they were there, like it was in Pennsylvania, Butler, Pennsylvania, I believe it is.
Pennsylvania.
Didn't they have enough time to just look around and to make sure that the grounds were secured? You had within a visual distance a rooftop of Donald Trump. Somebody screwed up. The thing is it an inside job? Is it negligence? Is it stage? Is it foreign actors? I don't know. It's probably one of those four, maybe something else that I'm not considering. I know you might have some ideas that you want to talk about.
I've got a million stories about a million things, but I was in Vancouver in, I think it was early 90s, and they were hosting a summit between I don't know if it was a G7 summit or what it was, but they were out at University of British Columbia. They were hosting a G7 summit, and I don't know where the hotel was, but I was sitting at a coffee shop on Cornwall Street in Vancouver when the motorcade were taking these guys out to UBC, and there was snipers on every roof. There was, and this was a different time, and it was in Canada, right? I mean, It's not like, and it was a different time, and it was in Canada, and there was RCMP officers at every corner, every intersection. And I remember sitting there having a coffee and with somebody, and this guy was going to ride his bike on the road. He's just, and they said, oh, you can't ride down here. And the guy sort of took it a little bit lighter than he should, and they tackled him and pinned him down. Now, you know, Clinton, I believe it was Yeltsin at the time. I mean, it was obviously an international thing, and obviously it was on foreign soil. So maybe the Canadians were a little bit overzealous, but having lived for 15 years in the United States and understanding the intensity of the times that we live in, it's very difficult for me to believe that they would leave a rooftop 100 meters away from the former president unattended. It's almost unimaginable. It doesn't even seem like, I'm not obviously a security expert, but that just doesn't really add up, you know. And I don't think
it's hard to adjust that.
Yeah, it is hard to address that. Because rooftops are kind of where you want to be. It's not like that's sort of where you want to have that high ground. Listen to me.
So you were saying in Vancouver they had those snipers in the corners for the motorcade. Think logistically how much more difficult it is for a moving motorcade that has to go from point A to point B. It's a long distance and it's a lot of ground to cover versus a stationary location where Trump had his rally.
Yeah.
I'm not an expert in this field. I could be way off base, but I think it would be far easier to secure the grounds that Donald Trump was on, given the fact that you're not dealing with many dynamics aside from just the people that are there and the grounds in which you're trying to secure, nothing else. As long as you're able to make sure that there's no visual locations, any sort of drones coming in, you're knocking them out of the sky, shit like that.
Do you want to hear a little conspiracy theory I have?
Go ahead.
And I'm not big in. I was up until probably a year ago. I was like not in on anybody's conspiracy theories about anything. Like we landed on the moon. Elvis actually died. Like I'm not in on any of these things. However, I have to think that, you know, with Trump's resume that he's had since he was 45, he's now a convicted felon 34 times. He's been shot. He's been, you know, he's had sex with porn stars. This guy's rap album is going to be platinum because he is like gold teeth and some knuckle tattoos away from cutting the biggest rap album of all time. He's got to have like Dre or some of these guys on the phone with him. Suge Knight has got to be reaching out because
50 Cent is actually getting involved, I think. But anyways, it's just go on.
But I mean, to take the conspiracy theory legit, you know, his injury is so incredibly. I mean, the guy is 78 years old. He got shot in the ear, hit the deck, popped up, and he, you know, and blood coming out of his ear, and has the presence of mind to put his fist in the air and get that picture taken. And it makes me think, and this is the only reason that I think that it makes is it's also perfect because if he gets shot anyplace else, there's an entry wound, exit wound. The picture's not as good because you wouldn't be able to tell. But it clipped his ear, which doesn't actually leave a bullet hole. Like anything could have clipped his ear, but the blood on the face makes the picture 10 times bigger because we're Canadians. We love those hockey players that got the blood on the face and stuff like that. That's always iconic. He's had some experience in the WWE, so he would know how to do that. And he ducked behind the podium and then came up bleeding. And I was just like, could it be? Like, I don't know. I'm off social media, so I don't know. Maybe this is a meme that's been done a million times, and I'm just sort of spouting off some like overdone conspiracy theory. But he fell down behind a podium. He might not have even known. Maybe it was some Secret Service agent with a that just you know nicked his ear, and he would stand up and go, "I guess I'm shot." You know, I don't know. It would be one of the very few people would have had to have known about it, unlike this moon landing where a lot of people would be involved.
I think that there's so many moving parts here with Donald Trump thing. It's hard to really say that may be a theory that holds water, given that initially, I'm just going to say right off the bat, I was questioning as to how did he avoid getting hit in the skull when it was directly to the side of him. But then after looking at the video, he turned almost 90 degrees to the side. So his eyes were looking almost right at the shooter.
Yeah.
So that makes sense why he got clipped on the ear rather than getting it in the skull. So it was just simply good luck that he turned it. But there was also somebody did an analysis of the photo of him raising his fist with the American flag behind him. There is a hole in his suit jacket pocket or suit jacket. There's a hole there. And so people are assuming maybe he also got shot there and a bulletproof vest prevented him from getting injured. Yeah. I don't know if it's true or not, but people are looking at this and say, why is there a hole there? And especially right after he got shot, there's a lot of, and another thing is somebody got killed through the fire. It wasn't really crossfire. It was just one of the missed shot. Unfortunately got hit in the head. So there's a lot of things over here that's just, it's suspect.
I think the amazing thing is that, you know, he has just got this knack because I never really believed that he was the tough guy that he pretended to be, right? He talked tough and all that sort of stuff. He's 78 years old. And I don't care if he got shot, like if he got nicked by an AR-15 rifle bullet, like I like to think that I'm in pretty good shape. I would have gone down, stayed down. I would have been sobbing. He gets up, turns around and puts his fists in the air and fight. He's different, man. Like he's an old man, you know, and during the debate, I said, oh, these two old guys, I can't bear to watch it. It's so terrible. but I don't know that when a guy gets shot and reacts like that, I don't know that you can call him an old guy anymore. I don't know. Like I've got to sort of rethink that, because that was pretty quite something.
The funny thing, he played golf the day after. I'm not sure if you saw any video footage, but he was at one of his Trump's Bedminster course, and he was early tee off time. He was just playing golf again like a regular old day. So it was pretty funny that he kept his tee time and made it once again. But that was, just a side note more than anything else. Something also of note is that the Bitcoin price reacted to all this, and it reacted positively, which is very interesting. The question is, why was it a positive feedback with the price of Bitcoin? Well, maybe because stability. The fact that he didn't die shows that there's going to be some stability moving forward. Because if he did, it would throw up a lot of questions in the air what would happen moving forward. So now we know that he's still going to be there moving forward. So there's some stability.
Yeah.
There. But secondly, sorry?
Go ahead.
I was going to say he's more involved in Bitcoin. He's going to the Bitcoin conference this week, I think, next whatever it is. So
one of my frustrations with Donald Trump has always been sort of a real lack of focus and clarity, I thought, on policy, like at least at things that matter to me living in the Pacific Northwest. I understand that there's some border things and stuff like that, but that's more sort of the Southeast or sort of Southwest. But this Bitcoin thing, I mean, I have to believe, and I've kind of maintained that whoever wins this election, just where we are in the long-term debt cycle, where we're, the polarization is going to go down as the worst president in history, and through no fault of their own. It might be some fault of their own, but just where we are, I just think that there's a certain inevitability to where we're at with our compromised fiat money. And I think that maybe I'm a bit early on this. The next 4 years are probably going to be more than a little bit rough, because it's going to be very difficult to unite a country, very difficult to fix what is wrong with our economy, because what's wrong with our economy is different than it's not about unemployment, and it's not about stock market returns and stuff like that. It is a different kettle of fish than we've ever had before. So all of the talking points that we always want to talk about don't really matter anymore, because we have low unemployment, and we've got soaring stock markets, and people feel poorer. And a lot of that has to do with inflation, but there's a lot of but it has more to do that we've got these, our fiat currencies around the world are becoming increasingly compromised after COVID. So I don't know that traditional things that Republicans want to do, like tax cuts, that is even more inflationary, right? There's those are types of things. So the Democrats, more regulation is going to sort of stymie growth. So, but either way, I mean, I think that there's an inevitability to this is going to be a rough 4 years for whoever wins the White House. But what gives me great hope is that, and what makes me, happy that Trump not only survived, obviously, but that he's a Bitcoin guy. And I feel like he likes to jump on the hot topics all the time. But I really, really hope that he's got people around him that will give him the conviction that he needs to stick with this, because this is super exciting that he's going to go speak at a Bitcoin conference. I've been to those conferences a few years ago. They're tiny, kind of niche little organizations that put these things on, and the idea that an American president, former or present, or somebody that's the Republican nominee is going to speak at a Bitcoin conference is amazing if you think about where this thing has come in the last 15, 20 years.
Yeah, it's from essentially nothing from 2009 to where it is today. And now you have a presidential candidate that will likely win the next general election. And he's going to be attending the conference and talking about Bitcoin. He's even said that Bitcoin is potentially a strategic asset, a strategic reserve asset that the U.S. should be investing in. And he's talking negatively about the Federal Reserve as well. So if you do all this, if you kind of read the tea leaves, there's something here. There's more to the message that we actually know probably. And also today he picked his running mates, JD Vance, I think is his name. I don't know much about him, but somebody did note that he has a bill that, so I'll just pull up the article. He's floating around a crypto plan that's being called. This is from political.com. And it looks like because he has exposure to Bitcoin, he has either between 100,000 to 250,000 worth of Bitcoin as per his disclosure forms. So he knows about it. And he looks like he wants to get involved with creating some sort of law or regulation around it. So this is very interesting now with being Trump's running mate and him having exposure and ideas about Bitcoin. This is an interesting time. I'm not sure exactly how to react from all this, but I'm going to sit back and watch how the cards fall. I'm just going to keep buying, to be honest.
My interest in Bitcoin arose from, when you run a private credit fund, each and every quarterly meeting, we have these quarterly meetings, and we always talk about, our deepest, darkest fear. And mine has been currency debasement. It's always been that, and it's becoming, to me, more and more real all the time, slowly. But that's how it happens, slowly at first, and then all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got interested in Bitcoin in the first place. Is that it is the that and gold, and I was very interested and involved in gold for a long time as well. So I think that those types of assets are going to be very, very important if you're going to come out the other side of some sort of shock. And I can't think of anything. I mean, it impacts currency debasement. Impacts everything. It's like a natural disaster, but it is, you don't have to be on a coast. It's a tsunami and an earthquake and a hurricane and a cyclone and a twister all wrapped up in one. There's no escaping it. And the idea that there's some people in the White House that are, actively thinking about that, because I'm amazed at how nobody ever talks about. Neither side actually ever comes right out and says, that a lot of the problems that we've got is that, and the radicalization and the polarization has to do with late stage debt cycles that are impacting the way we think about everything, gender, the likelihood of fascism or communism and all. We're just hyper aware, and and I believe it's late stage debt cycle.
Yeah, late stage fiat is a term that a friend of the show, talks a lot about. Now, in terms of what they're using the US dollar for, it's the weaponization of it. And I can understand that. It's a powerful tool. It's a powerful asset at your disposal that you could use almost at any time.
Amazing, yeah. Just
hurt somebody and hurt countries, companies, you name it. But the problem is, if they recognize this and if they sort of go away from this, it's taking away one of the huge advantages they have. Like, could you imagine being in a position of strength and saying, you know what, I don't want to be in this position of strength. I want to go to something else. It's a hard bridge to cross. It's very difficult to do because you're going to make a lot of people very unhappy, and a lot of people suffer for a period of time. Like, if we're going to play this out, if somehow there's going to be a transition to Bitcoin in a way, either Bitcoin-backed US dollar or Bitcoin used as a currency in the United States, or some sort of fashion like that, it's not going to be an easy transition. It's going to be a point where you're going to have devaluation of your currency. You're not going to be able to spend as much because you don't have the ability to spend as much. Then your influence on foreign actors, foreign nations, it's hard to do because you can't fund military operations the same way you can right now, or you can't buy covert operations the same way you can. So you're just giving up a lot of power. So it's hard for me to see this play out very soon. This is more of a long-term plan, but man, I don't know. I don't know if it's possible we're going to see anything change in the next little while. I think it's going to be status quo, unfortunately.
But 10 years or so. Is it not, Len, like, from a government perspective, I'm with you. Like, that US dollar is the greatest weapon. It's like it can be used so it's like a velvet hammer or something. It's so covert. The SWIFT system, the stroke that the that the U.S. government has, and the hammer that it's been able to wield to, and the terror that it's caused for people around the world, is significant, and they may lose some of that power, which I have to think, I don't know, is that not kind of good for the world a little bit? But as a consumer, as an individual, that you have, all of a sudden you have the opportunity to have hard money, that because, gold, we always talk about the problem with gold is gold comes, you need a power generator, you need a safe, you need a rifle, you need a place in the mountains, and Bitcoin, is that digital gold that's so clean and so slick. So, I mean, I'm talking to a bunch of people here right now that are going, yeah, tell us.
No, but you're talking the truth.
It's the truth. But as is, you have this sovereign individual. If governments have this sort of, if they have the growing pains, because like everything, they've got this big, massive behemoth that they have got to move, and they've got to change how they do things, and they've got to and their currency is going to be somewhat destabilized, if not devalued. But if the individuals and the people at home have this little, they have their passcode or their passphrase, and they're able to sort of sit there with hard money, not even under a mattress, just actual hard money that they can move around with and all those types of things. I mean, my hope is that the revolution that you would see at the end of these late stage debt cycles is Bitcoin. That's it. Full stop. It is just the legends and the Dean Lindens of the world and the Joeys of the world, pick up this sort of thing and insulate them from whatever might be ahead, and it keeps them off the streets, and we don't have to go run around with torches and pitchforks.
I hope we don't get to that point, but I'm maybe just the pessimist of the two over here. I fear that there's going to be a vacuum if there's ever going to be a reduction. Reduction of the U.S. dollar in terms of using it as a weapon. Somehow there's going to be filling into that void. China may come into play, maybe Russia, whoever.
So that's the Russia, China. When you look at the history of the world reserve currencies, it was the Dutch did a whole bunch of stuff with their guilder, and then they passed it. Then the torch was passed to the Brits, and then to the U.S. All of those things were, democracies, fair elections. What Trump hasn't done a good job of is selling the idea that the U.S. is still a fair and free elections and the peaceful transfer of power. Whether the election was stolen or not, I mean, I think that people would have all kinds of arguments. But, that strictly for the U.S. dollar, the case for the U.S. dollar, being able to say that we've got fair and free election and peaceful transfer of power and a very high functioning democracy, which was at least the illusion up until 2020. That's not, I mean, that rhetoric, that conversation is already very detrimental to the U.S. dollar, because otherwise you could say, before then you could say, well, Russia doesn't have fair and free elections, so it can't be the ruble, and the Chinese, what's it called, yuan, they're a dictatorship or they're communist or whatever, so you can't use that. One guy can change his mind. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of joined that group. We're kind of now sort of degraded ourselves a little bit. The U.S. dollars, and I'm not sure if that wouldn't have happened anyhow, but it is interesting that it comes on the heels of us, for the first time in my lifetime, questioning whether or not we have fair and free elections.
Well, that's a question because of what happened last time, and it seems like even this time around, what's going to happen in the next few months, it's still not decided exactly who it is going to be allowed to vote. It's still trying to figure out, is it people that have to have some sort of identity to prove that they are a citizen? And I can understand the argument on both sides. One argument is you have to show it, and it makes sense because only citizens are allowed to vote. On the flip side, though, people are saying that there's a cost involved with getting that document, and if you're poor, then what option do you have between paying for the next meal for you and your family or buying that document that enables you to vote? Obviously, you're going to pick the food option, so you may be priced out from actually voting in the next election. So I can understand the argument on both sides, but you're still trying to figure out how people are going to be able to vote. There's no continuity. There's no blank slate of it's done all different states. Every state does it differently too. So it just raises so many questions, concerns, like what's being done, how is it being done, questions. El Salvador, I mean, I'm really going to go into weeds here, but fuck, El Salvador had an election not too long ago. Granted, smaller country, but they wrapped up everything the same day. Here you have days and days of figuring out, is it recount, and then go through the judge and have it notarized by the judge and say that, yeah, this is like, it's bullshit that you have to go through. You're the United States of America. You should have all the resources at your disposal to make this go as smooth and as quick as possible, not to last for fucking weeks at a time.
Is that not an issue of the Electoral College, though? Is it not, like, if they just went, hey man, everybody go vote, count them up, and we'll sort of see where we come out at? Is it not the Electoral College that kind of complicates that with the delegates and all that stuff?
See,
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, the founders were a bunch of badasses, and I think they thought of absolutely everything. And the Electoral College, as far as I know, has not failed us up until now. But maybe it's time to rethink that. I don't know. I'm certainly not an expert, but
yeah, maybe it could be time to modernize it. But I don't know if that's the problem or not. I mean, more than anything, I'm just venting my frustration at the whole system and the fact that United States, everybody looks at them. Oh, this is the shining beacon that everybody should look to aspire to become. They can't even run their elections properly, that you're going to have a clear-cut decision within the next day or so. Sometimes it takes weeks. Other countries that people would say they're backwater countries, and I'm sorry to say this about El Salvador, but comparatively, their GDP.
No, El Salvador is a backwater country. That is,
it's maybe a lot better. I would rather walk the streets of San Salvador than San Francisco, if that says anything. Because it seems to be much safer over there. But think of like the amount of money they could pour into the United States in terms of making the elections nice and quick and easy, and they can't do it.
Yeah,
like this is the most basic thing. This is democracy. This is impacting who's going to be governing the next 4 years and potentially beyond. And you can't even figure that shit out. And you want to control the dollar? You want to figure out how you're going to figure out how the dollar is going to be playing out in the next 50 to 100 years? Get the fuck out of here.
But that I think there has been those kind of those little cracks in the system for a long time, but it was for the good of the whole gig, right? As long as nobody says anything, hey, they got fair and free elections, because we could go around the world then and put our finger on the scale on other people's elections, right? Okay, we're going to see how we're going to run this. We're going to run this election. Oh, our guy won. Can you believe it? It's amazing. But, I think that it's just, and nobody really, at least domestically, asked any questions. And now I think that it's kind of either it's completely made up or the cat's out of the bag, depending on where you sit. And I don't know which one is it, because I'm just now getting into the conspiracy theory thing, just getting into
and the question is, for how long has this been going on for? Is this just a recent phenomenon, or is this something that's been going on for years, decades? And if so, like, what's been influenced and what's changed, what shouldn't have changed?
Well, remember when Gore and Bush?
Yes, I was going to say that. Bush Gore, 2000.
Bush Gore, and somebody went to Al Gore. And because, I mean, that was legitimately, like, it all came down to Florida, and there was the hanging chads and all that sort of stuff. And someone went to Al Gore and went, for the good of something, wasn't for the good of the Democratic Party, wasn't good but for the good of some, and it probably wasn't, I just can't imagine the stakes of the opportunity to be the American president, the leader of the free world, is so huge. I wonder what the argument was to Al Gore, or if he's just the kind of guy that went, I didn't really want to do that anyhow for the next 4 years. I don't know what it was, but what was the argument for him to go call George and congratulate him and just end this thing? Like, I don't, I mean, I know there was courts in there, but that didn't seem
exhausted everything.
Yeah, it was legitimate. Everybody could kind of see that it was a problem. Here, there wasn't obviously a problem, depending on who you talk to, but other than it took forever. And that was the other thing, right? It was because the COVID and the mail-in ballots and all that bullshit not that mail-in ballots are bullshit, but there was a lot of COVID stuff that was sort of poisoning the water, so to speak.
You know what? There's one or two other topics I want to talk about Bitcoin. We've been at this for like 20 something minutes. It's a good topic. I want to bring up something interesting. Block. I'm not sure if you've been following this. Formerly Square, Jack Dorsey's company. So they've introduced some new Bitcoin mining chips this past week. This is, well, at least they've been doing this for a little while, but finally we've got this unveiled because a Bitcoin miner called Core Scientific, it's a very large publicly traded Bitcoin miner. They came out this past week saying that they have come to an agreement with Block. They've been working together, and Block is going to be providing Core Scientific with around 15 exahash per second of their new 3 nanometer chip technology, the new ASICs that are using 3 nanometer chips. Now, Core Scientific currently has around 25 exahash per second. So this is 15 exahash is a significant amount of hash rate they're going to be getting strictly from these chips from Block. There's no time frame given as to when this equipment could be delivered. So it could be delivered in the next 20 years, and so it really doesn't mean very much. I don't think that's the case. Either way, this is good news on 2 fronts, and I'll explain why. Number one, Block. They seem to have gotten their shit in order, and they have potentially become a major player in the Bitcoin mining game. This is great because aside from being publicly traded, Block is publicly traded, and there's some greater transparency that comes with those types of companies. And I believe they're based out of Silicon Valley. That's great because now you have a US-based company that has very strong ties to the United States that's getting involved in the Bitcoin mining side of things. I'm talking the chip manufacturing. Because up until now, it's been Bitmain as the big player, and there's a Chinese company, so a lot of questions with that. But the second thing that's big about this is the 3 nanometer technology. The current king of the hill is the Bitmain S21s, and those use 5 nanometer chips. So you're going from 5 nanometer to 3 nanometer. It's a big jump. But the question is, this may be all good, but I have a couple of questions. How much is this manufacturing process going to be done, if any, in China? Because if then, we're kind of losing whatever advantage that potentially could be gained. The delivery of chips. When are these chips going to be delivered? Is it soon? Is it long? I have no idea. The chips themselves, what's the durability and longevity of them? Because Bitcoin mining typically is very harsh on the equipment, given the environments they operate in. And 3 nanometer is not a very old technology. This is something that's rather new. Because if you look at, in fact, in September of last year, MediaTek and TSMC, they announced that they've developed their first 3 nanometer chip. That was just less than a year ago. Now we're going ahead and picking up with Bitcoin mining. So could they do the volume? Are they durable enough? I don't know. What's the profit margins of these units? Again, I don't know. Will Block be taking a haircut on each unit? Because there must have been a heck of a lot of money they put in R&D. Either way, and the last question I have is, do they also allow for aftermarket firmware? We'll find out in the next little while. But either way, a lot of good. But as I rhyme this off, a lot of questions. I don't know the answers to them. Time will tell. But maybe you have any insight, any input you want to put for this one, Dean.
I think that some of your viewers are well aware that Bitcoin mining is a brutal game. It is a very difficult thing to be good at. I think that you need to keep the, obviously you got to find cheap power someplace, and the other thing is you have to have you have to keep state of the art technology. These big leaps in advancements in technology, it does 2 things. It weeds a lot. It obviously makes the haves have more, and the have-nots just fall further behind. So I think it's interesting to see when these big sort of tectonic shifts happen in technology, what happens with the difficulty rate and whatnot. I think that it's interesting. It's a bit frankly, a bit above my pay grade. I don't feel like I'm in a position to really sort of say one way or the other whether it's going to be great for some, great for the ones that can finance and get these new chips, and not so good for the rest of them, because it's going to concentrate the power centers.
Well, anything to get the market share away from Bitmain is good in my opinion. Well, I want to add to that.
Unquestionably, that's good. That is
as long as it's a U.S. company, or at least a Western nation. I'm using the air quotes here, type company that's involved. I'm all for that. I want to see that. I want to see a more decentralized system in place where you have less market share assigned specifically to Bitmain. That would be ideal. Will Block achieve that?
And it did feel like there was a bit of a. I read a book about John D. Rockefeller and his kerosene business and his, Standard Oil, and that, like, how impossible it is with those types of monopolies to not be corrupt. Now, I'm not going to speak specifically to anything that I know about corruption from Bitmain. I'm not saying that at all. All I'm saying is, when you have that type of stroke over an entire industry, it's impossible to be fair and to be reasonable, just because you've got people that are so desperate that they got to deal with you. And I think that's that is definitely a positive.
I guess I have one last Bitcoin related story before we go to the other side of things. This is a story that I missed, and I apologize because this was from a couple of months ago. A listener passed it on to me. It's a coal miner called Alliance Resource Partners. They're a publicly traded company on a NASDAQ. And they, as a coal miner, just keep this in mind, they have mentioned that they're mining for Bitcoin. And they've mined, as of April of this year, $30 million worth of Bitcoin, around 425 BTC in total. I think that's rather cool that you have a company that's utilizing whatever power they have, underutilized electricity. They say that, in fact, that this is at their Riverview mine. They're diverting that underused electricity to mine Bitcoin.
Stranded power.
Exactly. So we talked about this many, many times on this show. And I wish I brought this up at the time I heard about this, but I find this to be fucking interesting that you have, as you mentioned, stranded power, this electricity that just simply is going to be wasted, and they're finding ways to monetize this. This is where I'm seeing a lot of hash rate coming online in the next little while. And I know that Joey just talked to the CFO at Bitfarms last week, and I listened to the majority of that. I haven't finished. I'm around 3/4 into it. And I know that they want to stay strictly Bitcoin mining, and they're expanding, especially in South America. But my question, and I think that it's really going to be, this is how it's going to play out, is you're going to see less of those Bitcoin miners. They might consolidate as it was discussed in that show, but the reality is that the majority of hash rate coming online in the next little while is going to be from these stranded power sources, and is going to be taking advantage of it and monetizing something that previously was not monetized. So that's going to be very interesting, and that's going to help decentralize the whole hash rate, because you have energy that is wasted in Middle East, in Russia, in Canada, in South America, all these places. Great place to just set up a few Bitcoin miners, scale it out.
I think the successful Bitcoin miners, all do that. It's all, power that is in some way, shape, or form, because otherwise you can't afford it. It's such a hand in glove type of thing. If it's not stranded, if it would otherwise be used, you can't afford it. And especially now with the, since the latest halving, and even before that. And I think that when I hear certain politicians come out against Bitcoin, and they have this sort of like very sophomoric understanding of what they're saying, and it's like some staffer handed them a note on, oh yeah, this is our position, and we're all about the environment, and this uses power, and they have all these sort of, it uses more power than this country or that country or whatever the case may be. It's extremely frustrating. And just not to beat the Trump drum too much on strictly from a Bitcoin perspective, it's great that now VP Vance, and he's a young guy that understands the frustration of being 39 and having virtually no economic opportunities laid out in front of you, except he'll be able to do insider trading once he becomes a full he'll be able to, so he'll have lots of opportunities. But the other 39-year-olds that aren't the vice president of the United States will be able to access some of these new world economic opportunities that haven't been available to generations before. It'll be unique to the Gen Zs and millennials.
I guess before we wrap up, we have one question from the audience asking about Luxfolio, and if maybe you could talk anything about that, exactly what happened over there.
You know what? Because we've got an operating a management group on that. I'd be happy to talk about it offline. Be delighted, and if they want in the chat, they want to exchange numbers. I'm happy to talk about that. But Luxfolio is a clean shell, looking for any and all opportunities right now in the space, whether it be DeFi, Bitcoin, AI, whatever might arise there. We're actively seeking something over there. I'm not a director or an officer, strictly an investor.
Got it. All right, Dean, that's it for the Bitcoin side of things. We'll wrap things up and go to the other side. Usually we call it notable stories. So with that, any last words before we sign off? Nothing you have to do, just stay on. On the audio side, of course, it's going to be different for video side. Any last words before we sign off on the Bitcoin side?
That's it for me.
All right. Well, with that, don't be a cuck, and we'll just move on to the notable side. So thanks and take care.